Okay, hello everyone. Today is March 2nd, 2024, and I wanted to put this video out ahead of the upcoming Stanford application deadline for transfers, which is March 15th, 2024. However, this video should be timeless and it doesn't matter when you come upon it. I hope that you find some use in it. And also, it doesn't matter what school you're applying to, whether it's Stanford, whether it's another private, whether it's a state school, whatever it is. I hope that these goals and the information that I share with you today will be helpful no matter what your situation is. So, my name's Alan Brantley, and I transferred to Stanford out of community college. I put up a video about my experience as a transfer student, and the point of that video and this one as well is to encourage you to apply to transfer not only to Stanford, but any school that you feel that you are qualified to attend. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. I wanted to do this very low tech because I'm ADHD and I can middle around forever and never produce this video. So I wanted to just go ahead and get this out. And so what we're going to do is look at my personal statement, which history tells us was accepted, and critique it, because I want you to always understand that no matter how good, no matter how polished, it can always be better. And when we start to look at these essays, you'll see, indeed, in my case, they definitely could be better. Now, if you want to just go ahead and read the personal statements unadulterated, you can visit my website here, and the link will be down below in the description. And you can just go ahead and look at these personal statements without any editing, without any commentary or anything like that. And you can find that here. But without further ado, let's get into this. So the first thing I want to do is look at the goals of the personal statement, right? The question is, please provide a statement that addresses your reasons for transferring and the objectives you hope to achieve. So for me, I break down this question into 4 subcategories. How did you choose your major? How have you prepared for your major? What are your academic goals? And what are your goals after college? And I think these are the good 4 points to hit on. You can watch other tutorials and they'll to talk about other points to hit on, but these are the main 4 points that I think we should try to hit on when we're answering these prompts. Okay. Now, my strategy when I applied to Stanford was very simple. Tell my story, show, don't tell. And what I mean by that is, I had the academics to back it up, but I also had some questionable portions of my history and my resume that I felt like needed to be explained. And so what I wanted to do was let my story sort of guide that decision making. The GPA was there, the extracurriculars were there, but I thought my best asset was my story. And it was about not only my story, but taking my perceived weaknesses in my story and turning them into strengths. Okay, so that was my strategy, to tell my academic story, which in storytelling, I consider the plot against the backdrop of my personal history, which we could call the setting. Okay, and use the personal statement to do that, as well as the additional information essay. Okay, so the main points that I wanted to get across, and I suggest you do this as well, is I wanted them to know a handful of things. I wanted them to know that I had a difficult upbringing. I wanted them to know that I overcame adversity through circumstance or adversity through poor decision making. That I put the community in community college, that I really was a believer in my community and I was a contributor to my community. I definitely wanted to take ownership of my blemishes, take ownership of the things that I didn't do well in my life. I wanted to talk about how and why I got interested in math. That's an interesting story. How I registered as a math major and started at pre-algebra. I wanted them to know that my success in mathematics was not a result of my innate ability. I wanted them to know that I worked really hard and I started at the bottom and I was able to achieve this kind of success. And finally, when you're applying to a school like Stanford and there's a 1.9% admission rate, I wanted them to know that I'm unique, I'm different, I stand out, okay? And then just some general tips and guidelines for essays in general, and this is always true in any personal statement. First of all, you got to answer the prompt. It doesn't matter how great your essay is. If you don't answer the question, you're probably going to get a failing grade. Okay. Now, I talk a lot about telling your story, but I think sometimes that confuses people because it comes into conflict with answering the prompt. So the first thing you got to really do is answer that prompt. And so when you tell your story, you have to do that within the context of your prompt. And there should be two aspects. So in television, we often see our television shows have an A story and a B story. And so the way I try to break this down is your academics, the thing that prepare you to be a compelling candidate at your university, that's the plot. That's the main point. But you want to set that against your background, which is what I consider the B story, and that's the setting. Okay, so what have you done under what conditions? And then that's how we turn our weaknesses into strengths. Okay, so let's say you've got a 3.5 GPA, but you did that in the context of working a full-time job, supporting your family, maybe an illness or something, like anything that can shows like, look, yeah, my GPA may not seem competitive at first, but when you look at the context under which I actually demonstrated this GPA, then it becomes more impressive. So don't be afraid of your past, okay? Embrace it. You've made mistakes, potentially. You've got a gap in your resume. You've got something that you're not super proud of. Don't be afraid of that. Turn that around. Show how that thing in your past actually shows growth from point A to point B. All right, so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to show them, yes, I made a lot of mistakes in my past, but I took ownership of them and I've turned my life around. So I wanted to show them that growth from point A to point B. Okay, overcoming adversity is always a key note to hit in these applications. And you want to demonstrate the ability to persevere through hardships. You want to show grit, right? Because when you're going to these elite schools, you're going to find that the curriculum in some cases is going to be much more difficult than what you experienced in community college. Everything's going to be different and it's just going to be harder, I think. And then finally, be the hero of your story, but don't be a victim. I see quite a few essays where people kind of list out all the bad things that have happened to them. And you want to gain sympathy, but you don't want to make them sad, right? But more than that, you want to show that, yes, these things happen to you, but they don't define you. They didn't define where you are now. They were the circumstances that you faced and you overcame them. So going back to this overcoming adversity, right? Be the hero of your story. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this essay and I'm going to look at this essay and I'm going to critique it. Okay. So we already know the end result. We already know that I was accepted into Stanford, but we should also know that no matter what, no matter how good our essay is, it can always be improved. And so this is something like you could expect if you were going to come to me with your essay and ask me to critique it. If it's very good, I might not actually have a lot to say because I don't want to go in and alter your voice. And so I'm going to try to do this in a way that's not overly critical. But as we can already see, there are errors in this essay. And the reason why that is because I was editing up until 11:59. All right. And I submitted this moments after I wrote the last words. And I'll show you what those last words were. Another thing that I didn't mention in the goals here is that we're also going to use, well, I did mention it, the additional information essay. This is a very powerful essay that you can use to really tell your story because it's so open-ended. Okay, so without further ado, let's critique this thing. So before I get too deep before I even start the critique, I just want to point out, you have 650 words in most cases. And yes, this is a 650 word essay. So a lot of the grammatical choices that I made were in this context. I was trying to tell this great story in 650 words. So, some of these things about my major, that would have had to come out. But anyway, let's go through this. So when people ask me my major, I tell them semicolon, capital M, math. Right off the top, grammatical error. A semicolon should separate two independent clauses that are related. So on each side of the semicolon, we should have two complete sentences. So off the top, I've made a grammatical error. And I capitalize math, which is also incorrect, I think. When they ask me what I want to do, I tell them, semicolon, write books. Again, write books is not a complete sentence. I couldn't say to write books because of my word limit here. But right off the top, we're starting out in an unimpressive manner. So mild surprise is the typical response. I'm not your typical math major and about as far as from traditional as possible. I'm not going to read through all this. You can read it yourself. You can keep in mind the story I'm trying to tell. When I enrolled as a math major in 2014, I was placed where, missing a word, right? Not good. So we've already got some issues here. Place where left off, where I left off, right? When I enrolled as a math major in 2014, I was placed where I left off in the 9th grade and right where I wanted to be pre-algebra. Another incorrect semicolon use. It's embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. So here I'm really trying to just tell my story, but also show them that I'm passionate, and notice that I'm speaking in my voice. This is not a conventional essay, okay? So one thing I want you guys to know is, like, don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Tell them what you want them to know, because what they want to know is who you are as an individual, not have you regurgitate what you think they want to hear. Okay. The intellectual path that guided me to seek an education in the natural sciences was born of the frustrating realization that fluency in English was insufficient to understand the nature of the universe as described by modern science. Now, this sentence conveys what I was trying to convey. However, this is a very complicated sentence. So consider rewording for clarity and simplicity. You want this to be readable the first time. What we don't want our reader to be doing is going through and having to read a sentence 2 or 3 times just to understand its meaning. So I know I must have worked on this sentence for a very long time as a way to convey a pretty complicated idea in as few words as possible to meet the word limit and tell the story as I saw fit, but we can do better than this, okay? It was as if one needed advanced degrees to understand that the heck they were saying. So again, we have a pretty embarrassing typo that made it into the final statement. So that should be what, not that. This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, Google, I didn't have Grammarly at the time, but Google is not going to flag a word that's spelled correctly, even if it's the wrong word in the sentence. This is why you really have to get feedback, get other eyes on your essay, but before you submit, really go through it. Okay? It's embarrassing. But my work as a supplemental instruction leader and growth mindset ambassador have added another layer to my ambitions. I would try to avoid starting a sentence with or even a paragraph with the word "but." It's improper usage. And I wish I could have had Grammarly at the time, because yes, I agree with this suggestion. Let's try to reduce the complexity of the sentences as much as possible. This should be opportunities. You can see there are so many errors in this thing. It's embarrassing. Okay. These experiences have impacted me in profound ways as a learner and as a human being. I always knew that if I were ever successful in anything, the first thing I would want to would be share the secrets of my success. What? The first thing I would want to would be share? This doesn't even make sense. Okay, so reword. We need this to make sense. So be careful. So that others may find their own success and more easily than I did. Honestly, I mean, this whole sentence is just a poorly worded sentence. So again, all of this is a product of me being up, not starting my essay early enough, but also editing it up until the end of the deadline. My goals are the same as they were in the beginning. I want to write books. Another semicolon, at least this one is a proper usage. My hope is to learn and master my chosen STEM subjects so that I can, that's not what I wanted to do, so that I can one day write about them in ways that make the concepts accessible to a wider range of people. I think this is my topic sentence, my thesis statement right here. This is really what my goal was for going to college, what my goal was for studying math initially. This is exactly what I wanted to do and what I still want to do. So I think this is a strong close. It demonstrates the fact that I'm here to learn, that I've got a long way to go, but I've got big goals and big aspirations. All right. So I think, all in all, yeah, it's pretty embarrassing to have all of these grammatical errors. I think they could have been mitigated by just me starting earlier and me getting feedback and finishing at least 24 hours prior to the deadline. Okay, so let's move on to the second essay. I'm not your typical math major. Okay, so right away, we want to avoid repetition. Right? I already said this up here. I'm not your typical math major. So there's really no need for me to say that again. Again, it's just not being aware. Many people may assume a math major to be naturally gifted with mathematical thinking and computation. Not so with me, I admit it. So think about what my goal was here, right? I want them to know that I learned math from scratch. So what's great about this essay is it is incredibly open-ended, right? We can pretty much say whatever we want here. And so I use this as an opportunity to really tell my story. I'm not mad at this mistake. This mistake is embarrassing. This should be 20s. I'm telling them a story about how I, worked in service. I'm letting them know that it was a rough path and things almost didn't work out for me. I wasn't just sinking, I was sunk. I was 30 years old. I had no education, no job, no dreams, no hope, and no future. I had no life to live and had lost my will to survive. This is all true. And this is where I'm really sort of telling them the story that I wanted to tell them in the personal statement. How I was at the end of my rope and then something changed within inside me where I developed a deep curiosity for the world around me. I started studying geometry and physics, and those studies ultimately led me towards mathematics. These passions would ultimately lead me to enroll in Fullerton College, where my life would change forever. And then, again, my goal at Fullerton College was actually to write books. So, still a goal. Not too mad at that. So you can see, this essay is really a personal narrative. It's really about showing them, again, what my perceived weaknesses are, which were, a GED, no real accomplishments before 30. In fact, I struggled deeply before 30. And so I wanted them to know, I have made a dramatic turnaround. And what I was trying to sell them on was my potential. It's like, all right, look, I got this story. A lot of it's really ugly. I've got these past 4 years at community college that look really great. And so I've been able to show some consistency in that area. But what I'm really trying to let them know is like, if you invest in me, I will perform. I will achieve the goals that you have for me and that I set out for myself. And I don't want to hang on this too much more, but I do want to point out this last paragraph because, you know, on one hand, while I say you shouldn't be up writing until 11:59 like I was, I can tell you I wrote these sentences with probably less than 10 minutes to go before the deadline. So I'm spending all my time in this essay talking about community, community, community. I love my community. I have never been a part of a community before here at Fullerton College. I'm finally a part of a community, but you know, it's ironic because I'm actually applying to go join another community, you know, and it's the natural progression, but at the same time, it's like, you know, it's more of that same story of jumping from community to community to community. So I say, I know this means I have to move again and to join yet another community. But this time, it's in the pursuit of something bigger than keeping a roof over my head. This time, it's about entering into the global community. This time, I'm prepared for it. And I tell you, when I wrote this sentence, I was so proud of it and I knew I was finished, right? And so essentially at that point, I hit submit, right? And so as you can see, these essays aren't perfect, but they do mainly the job that we set out to do. We wanted to bring up this upbringing. We want to show how we overcome adversity. We want to talk about our love in the community, take ownership of our actions, explain how and why, how we chose our major, how we prepared for it, what are our academic goals, what do we want to study, and what do we want to do after college. So I think all of these were met. And I think that the story is also a way to say that I'm unique, that I'm special. And that's something that you really want to show them, that you believe that you are unique, that you are special, because you are. We are all special individuals. But we just sometimes have to find a way to learn how to convey that and do it in a way that's humble and not, you know, braggy, right? So in terms of the main takeaways, story wins out over perfections or over imperfections, right? As we can see, there's a ton of room for improvement in these essays, but the truth is it ended up not hurting me because the story was compelling enough. So typos won't doom your essay, but that doesn't mean that you should submit your essay with these kinds of errors. And you know, I say typos won't doom your essay, but that comes with a huge caveat because we don't know who's going to be reading our essay. We don't know if they're an English professor, for instance, right? And if they are, maybe they're going to have a lot of problems with this. And they're going to say, well, it's a compelling story, but they didn't do a very good job of proofreading, editing. And so that makes me question whether they're a strong candidate for this school. So don't put yourself in a situation where you might have admissions officers trying to choose between the fact that you told a good story versus the fact that you turned in an unpolished essay. So I say, don't do what I did. Don't be editing your essay at 11:59 on March 15th. Try to have that essay finished by March 14th so that when you look at it on March 15th, you can do the little tiny fine tuning to make it polished. Do your editing in Google and copy and paste. So another thing that I was probably doing was editing my essay in the text box, which is why a lot of these things didn't get caught. Don't submit your essay without comprehensive proofreading, all right? Proofreading. Just don't do it. But do what I did. Tell your story. Show, don't tell. Don't be afraid to take risks. Don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Tell them what you want them to know, but don't brag. All right. And I think that, you know, it's okay to be confident, but you don't want to be arrogant, right? It's okay to talk about your hardships, but you don't want to play the victim. And it's okay to take risks, but just make sure that you're answering the prompt. Put your heart on your sleeve. You know, don't be afraid to share who you really are. And that's pretty much all I have. So I know this has been kind of an S show of a video, but hopefully this will help some people. And like I said, if you want to just go read those essays, go head over to my website and you can just read those personal essays there. So I hope this has been a help. If anybody has any questions or comments, please drop them down in below. If you want to contact me, you can reach me through my Fiverr, through my website, or you can go to my YouTube homepage and contact me via my email. So I hope everyone's having a great day. Good luck with your essays, and I'll see you next time.